when we were done getting gas, and he says, we entertain angels unawares. And there was a car that pulled up behind me, and he pointed at it. And I turned around looking at the car that pulled up behind me, and I look back, and the car and the guy is completely gone. Where'd he go?
We entertain angels unaware? This is Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. Those moments when heaven and earth collide and we see God. We see His hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention, inviting us into a closer relationship. Here we share stories of encounter with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences, big and little God incidents. I am your host, Trapper Jack. Welcome. So glad you're here. Hope you're having yourself a great day. Here's episode 71 of Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. Are you aware that you just heard a Bible verse at the beginning there?
And he says, we entertain angels unawares.
It's out of the book of Hebrews, chapter 13, verse 2. Take it, Alexa.
Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares.
In other words, you could be out there one day just yakking up a storm with an angel and having absolutely no idea. Could be. Like for example, you're out on the highway, rest area. Oh, good. So you stop, you need to hit the restrooms, maybe grab some coffee, a bite to eat, fill up the tank perhaps, and you get out of the car and you stretch the legs and it feels so good. You see all these other people doing the same thing, right? And every single one of those people have an angel, right? You have an angel. And then there are those special assignment angels, Their job is to connect this person here to that person over there. I mean, we have no idea.
We end up in Knoxville, Tennessee at the pilot truck stop.
This is Scott Ketelsen. And for a number of years, Scott and his wife, Lisa, were a husband and wife truck driving team.
This guy walks up to me and says, hey, can you help me out? I says, what do you mean? He says, well, can you help me out with some gas? And I says, well, I just don't give money out. Can I look at your gas gauge? And he says, okay. And we came over and, oh yeah, you need some gas. Go ahead and put it on pump number 4 over there. So I walk in, put $30 on the counter, pump number 4. I come out and he's telling me his story and how this must have been around the time of Katrina or one of these hurricanes. I don't remember. But they were fleeing from down there, trying to go up north somewhere and didn't have any money. Anyway, that's a story they told me. And so I prayed with the guy that the Lord continue to provide him, protect him, and give him everything he needed in life. And then when we were done getting gas, he looks at me and he says, we entertain angels unawares. And there was a car that pulled up behind me, and he pointed at it. And I turned around looking at the car that pulled up behind me, and I look back, and the car and the guy is completely gone. I was like, I didn't think about it at the time, but it was very strange. Where did he go so fast? I didn't even hear the car start. Where'd he go?
How many seconds was that?
I don't know, 2 seconds. He says, we entertain angels unawares. He points behind me with his car pulling up. I turn back and the guy's gone. That's what happened.
So in his case, do you think he was an angel?
Yeah. You know why? Because the car behind me was like, can you help us out? We need some gas.
We entertain angels unaware. Does that mean we're supposed to be nice to people because they might be an angel? No. Could it be a test? Yeah, could be. See how we're doing. Or it could be, as in this case, as the angel disappears, that family right there needs your help. And so Scott helped.
And this woman was like crying and she was just upset. And the guy was like, I just don't know, things happen and I didn't have any money and we have to get up to some place and this and that. And I got their story and I says, well, I just don't give money out. So let's see your gas gauge. Oh yeah. Okay. So I went in, plopped another $30 down. I says, I'll be right back. So we did that. Came out as the car was filling up. We all stood in a circle and we prayed, and she just started crying. And she looks at me. She says, I was praying that God would send somebody to help us, and you came along and helped us. Thank you.
A touched by heaven moment. I was asking Scott, how'd you find the podcast? What were you looking for? And he said, I was looking for something to lift me, something that, something with miracles and angels and such things. That he said, I needed to be reminded. I needed to be reminded of all the blessings that I have received through my life. And there have been so many blessings and so many touched by heaven moments. And I needed to be reminded because the last couple of years have just been so difficult. There have been some just horrific moments.
I wasn't charged with anything. If there's any truck drivers listening to this thing, I just ask you and plead with you to get a dash cam and put it in your truck, because the dash cam is what saved me. I have it all on video.
That part of Scott's story is coming up. Scott's story actually begins many years ago when he was working in the Seattle-Tacoma area at Boeing. But he got laid off, no fault of his own. They were just doing layoffs. He was one of them. So he doesn't know what he was going to do next. He joins a band. Then he gets on meth.
And one day I just kind of came to the end of myself. I was just, broke and busted and disgusted and sick of being sick and tired. And nothing was going right in my life. Things started falling apart. They kicked me out of the band, and I had nothing left. And
I mean, his life is just headed south. And his wife says, we need to get you to church. Why don't you come to church with me?
I had been, pretty much strung out on drugs. I went to church when I was strung out, and I went there on a Wednesday night, and he gave the gospel message, and the gospel message came forward, and I walked forward, and I accepted Jesus as my Savior and Lord into my heart, and Jack, it was like hot oil was poured on top of my head. It was like a washing, if it were, all the way down, and I could feel the tingling and the heat and the warmth and the light just filled me up, and I was delivered. I was set free from a drug addiction of methamphetamines. I no longer craved it. It was gone.
You haven't had a yearning to go back to that since then? I mean, just boom, done, gone?
Done, gone.
So on a Wednesday, Scott gets this healing. He doesn't want meth anymore. He's connected with God. It's great. On Thursday, the very next day, his old employer called, Boeing, saying, hey, we're rehiring again. Want a job? Well, yeah. Great. On Monday, just come in for a reevaluation and a drug test. A drug test? There's no way this stuff is getting out of his body by Monday. But he goes for the interview.
I just went up there. They checked everything out, and nobody handed me a cup.
What? Well, what did they do then?
Well, they checked my weight and my eyes and everything. And
they didn't give you a drug test?
No, they didn't give me a drug test.
Wow.
And, I was smoking weed, too. I mean, I had all that in my system. And that's what happened. And it was absolutely incredible. I couldn't believe it.
Good deal. Scott is now connected to God. He's got himself a great job. Everything's wonderful. But he and his wife, Lisa, they start getting interested in truck driving as a tandem, husband and wife, being together, working together. So that's what they do. They become husband and wife truck drivers. And this is where this series of touched by heaven moments began.
Here's another incredible one where I actually heard a voice. We were in Ontario, Oregon, and it was at the Pilot truck stop, and we were there grabbing a bite to eat. And I go walking in to use the restroom or whatever. I come back out, and as I step off of the curb, I hear a voice. I don't know. It was my inner. I don't know. It was an angel. I have no idea. But this is what I heard. Someone's going to ask you for gas. And right when I stepped off, I was startled. I'm like, where'd that come from? And as I'm walking towards the truck in between these two other trucks, a car pulls up. He gets out and starts asking my wife for money for gas. And I knew right away, let me see your fuel tank. Oh, yeah, you need some gas. Go pull it over there to a pump. And so we pulled it over there to a pump. And he was telling me how his wife, they were going to a job or something in Bend, Oregon, and didn't have the money to get the gas or even any food. And his wife was saying that she was praying that the Lord would help, that he would send somebody to help them. We prayed, we went in, I bought them some food, the whole family some food, and they were on their way. And, it's just how God hears your prayers. And if people are willing to listen, somebody will be there. somebody will be there and answer that prayer. And I just happened to be that person that day.
I should also mention that Scott looks forward to these moments, shouldn't we all, to helping somebody. In fact, if it seemed like nothing was happening for a while in that department, he'd pray about it. Hey, God, why aren't you using me? There's nothing that's been going on here lately. Isn't there somebody I can help? And God always responded.
I had to go back in and get the change from the gas because you just don't, I had to put $30 down or something. So I had to go back in and get the change. When I walked out, there were two boys sitting there. I was like, where'd these guys come from? And they said, sir, can you help us? I'm like, well, what can I help you with? He says, well, we're hungry. We haven't eaten like in 2 days.
So Scott, again to the rescue, says, well, you like Arby's? They go, yeah. And he said, then let's get you some Arby's food.
I come out, I give it to him. They're like, thank you so much. I looked at him and I just said, you know what? There was a man who lived 2,000 years ago. He died and rose from the dead. His name was Jesus, and he died for your sins. And they both look at me like with a like unbelievable look. Like, what? Then one of them says, you're the second person to tell us that today. When you guys get to Portland, you guys need to go find a church and commit your life to the Lord.
How old were these guys?
I don't know. They're just in the early 20s probably.
Yeah. Do you think this is one of those little moments where obviously, I mean, you've already passed one test, and then here come these two other, young men, and it's like, is that an angel with more tests for you?
I don't know.
Doesn't matter. I mean, it really
say.
doesn't matter. It's just you're doing God's
It's a great
work.
question. I've thought about that. It's a great question. It's very possible.
Because some people would go, I've already done enough today. You know what I mean? Some people go, I've been down this road. You know.
It's very possible.
You always seem to have time, Scott. You seem to always have time. I mean, I know truckers are always they always look like they're in a hurry because, you always have time limits and all this stuff and when you're supposed to be there. You always seem to have time. I mean, that's a decision on your part. That's a decision.
It's really a kind of a state of mind because it was like you're in expectation of something could happen at any time. And so you're just kind of ready for it. That's kind of the state of mind I was in.
Question. Does God like to have fun? Well, of course he does. We're made in his image, therefore, right? Okay. So he's working in this office, and there were a couple of women in there, both named Kathy. And one of them in particular liked to give Scott a hard time about his faith. It was obvious that Scott kind of wore his faith on his sleeve, if you will. And so she would kind of chide him a little bit about that faith. And one day she just said, hey, Scott, would you pray for snow? I'd like to see some snow, And it was like, what? Snow? And Scott just looked at her and went, okay, I'll do that for you. Okay. It was kind of like he was taking the challenge, right? Heads out to the truck and he stopped and he just started praying. He said, well, God, maybe before the weekend's out, huh? Just to show her that prayer works. He just threw it out there, right?
And what do you know? A truck and trailer just came over Snoqualmie Pass, and there was a 2-foot size clump of snow that just fell off the bottom of this truck. And I saw that, and I says, hallelujah, your faithfulness never ends. And I walked over there. I picked up that lump of snow. I stuck it in the back of my empty trailer. I drove it back over there before she left. I come marching into the office with this 2-foot clump of snow in my hand, and her mouth literally hit the desk. Boom. She said, oh, my God, where'd you get that? She says, I can't believe this. I'm going to have to take some off and put it in the freezer and show everybody. And the other Kathy was there, and she was speechless. She didn't know what to say. And I says, sometimes God will answer your prayers, but not always how you think.
Nice job, God. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that one, God. I appreciate that one.
Amazing.
Sometimes you can almost hear him laughing. Sometimes.
I know. Oh.
Oh, yeah. There was this time Scott and his wife were in Amarillo, Texas, and they were getting an oil change and a new fuel filter. And then they headed down the road about 400 miles, and they stopped, and they slept for a couple hours in the truck, and then they started tried to start the truck up again, and it wouldn't start.
I'm like, what's going on? So I open the hood, and there's no fuel in the fuel filter. I'm like, well, that all kind of works on a vacuum. And I look in, and the guy he forgot the O-ring. He didn't put the O-ring back in there. So all the fuel kind of drained out. I'm like, number one, how the heck did we even get up here? I'm scratching my head. How did we even get up here? And I was like, man, what am I going to do? Lord, help me. And I looked over. Well, this O-ring was sitting there on top of the wheel well. Now, imagine a 2-inch, maybe 1.5-inch piece of rubber that looks like an O-ring sitting there in the wind for 400 miles on a bouncy road all the way up to Denver. It didn't move. It sat there the whole time. So the guy who did the oil change didn't put the O-ring back in the fuel filter, and all the fuel ran out. But he actually set the O-ring on the thing and didn't put it on.
And it's just sitting there on your truck for 400 plus miles. Sitting there
on my truck for 400 miles.
Wow.
And I'm like, what am I going to do now? I got to put some fuel in here. I don't have anywhere to get fuel out of my tank. I just need a little bit of fuel put in there to prime it.
Fuel, you say? No problem. Say a prayer. Because just at the moment when he needed the fuel, who pulls in? Another truck from the same company that Scott and Lisa drive for. Fuel problem answered.
And so I got my fuel and I got it started up.
Sometimes we forget to ask. You asked. You didn't just sit there and complain and bellyache and not bring God into the equation. You asked.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's true. There's a profound lesson there. Did you ask? I mean, just got to ask.
Seriously, we sometimes forget to ask. We get so caught up in the woe is me that we forget to go, oh, by the way, can you help me out here?
Mm-hmm.
You know? A lot of things happen when you're out on the road. He lost his dad, and then his mom's health went into sharp decline. And then there was that one day.
We left someplace up in Utah, and we were going to Southern California. And we stopped at Victorville at the Pilot. We got some coffee and stuff. We get down to just getting into Temecula, California on I-15, and there he was. There was a boy, 22 years old, walking down the center of the freeway. Yeah, I killed him with my truck. Like, oh God, I just killed somebody. You know, and I got thinking about the delay. You know, if we hadn't stopped at the fuel station to get coffee and go to the bathroom, it might not would have happened, but it did.
It wasn't your fault. He's walking in the middle of the road, but it doesn't.
No, you're right.
But it still hurts. Obviously, it's just.
I wasn't charged with anything. I mean, if there's any truck drivers listening to this thing, I just ask you and plead with you to get a dash cam and put it in your truck, because the dash cam is what saved me. I have it all on video, and I showed it to the coroner when they showed up, and it wasn't my fault. And I'm thankful that it didn't happen when my wife was driving. His name was, get this, name was Christian. And he was 22 years old.
Is this a 2-lane road, a 4-lane road? When you say he's walking down the middle, explain what that means.
It's I-15.
Lots of lanes.
Lots of lanes. He's walking down the slow lane. He's walking down the center of the slow lane. It was like he was asking for it.
And you just came up and around, and there he was, and it's over?
I came over the hill, and there he was.
How do you even drive after that? How do you drive?
I was jumping at every shadow. I didn't want to, but I had to. You know, it was like I was jumping every shadow, and I just didn't want to do it. And I knew it was about time to get off the road. It was time this is going to end. You know. Your
wife was in the truck at the same time.
She was sleeping, so she didn't see it.
Yeah.
The noise woke her up.
Did she drive after that? Right after that?
Yeah. She drove it down.
Oh my gosh! I am so sorry. I am so sorry.
It's something that happened. Anyway, it took me a while to kind of, get through that. I was kind of depressed for a while. Anyway, so after about, a couple of weeks of kind of like, all right, yeah, I think I'm ready to go back out again. And so this is June. See, so July. So go back driving in July. We're out driving for a month. I'm still jumping at everything. I don't want to drive at night. I'm just totally, you know, I call the company and says, hey, we got to take care of mom, and we're just going to turn the truck in and we're done. We found an apartment. She moved in with us, and 30 days later, she died. Hospice was there, and we played nothing but her favorite gospel Elvis songs, and she listened to them over and over again while she was in there. She was ready to go, and she died in peace. We were there. Took the truck back to Chattanooga, dropped it off, and we said, we're done. Life's too short, The accident, dad dies, then mom passes away. We're getting up there in age. We don't even have kids yet. We don't even know if God's going to give us those. And so we just decided it was too short. Let's get off the road.
During the previous several years, Scott and Lisa were foster parents. The hope was to adopt, but 9 foster children went through their homes, and for a variety of reasons, that just didn't pan out. But suddenly, 2 kids popped up in their life to be foster parents, and then in this case, they were able to adopt.
We picked up our first child. His name was Jared, and when he was 30 days old, and about 5 months later, we picked up Juliet when she was 10 days old. And God finally answered that prayer that was prayed, years before. 50 years old, we're adopting these little kids. It's just amazing how they keep you young. And, I was working a couple of side deals at the time, trying to make some extra money on the side. And, I lost a lot of money. I made a lot of foolish decisions, trusted the wrong people. I really kind of fell into a depression, and I started drinking. I'd always kind of drank beer. I mean, even though I was delivered from methamphetamines years ago, I would always drink, still. But then I found myself beer wasn't doing it anymore. I had to have vodka. I was getting to be about half a bottle of vodka a night. Started having blackouts, and I kind of had my what the heck moment, my what the bleep moment, and I said, that's it. I know what can help me, and I've turned my back on the Lord through all my trouble and trials and everything. And so I started going to a thing called Celebrate Recovery, which is kind of a Christian type fellowship for people with different kind of ailments. I went there, and the first night I was there, the praise and worship was just, I don't know, it was just something. God touched me. I was set free. I haven't had a drink now in almost 6 months. I wanted that fellowship and that relationship back with the Lord, and He had mercy again. I'm grateful. So I picked up the guitar again, and like a flood, all this music starts coming. I start writing music again. Where is this coming from? And after everything that He's said and done, after what God has done in my entire life through this whole story that I just share with you is, how easy it is to forget, and how life can beat you and just tear you down and put you in a place of desperation, and you tend to forget what got you there, and how the faithfulness of God can lift you up and give you strength and all the answered prayers and everything. I forgot all that, and I had to repent. And I'm still kind of going through that repentance. I mean, some of these songs I'm writing, I can't even sing them all the way through because I just end up in tears. And
what a series of stories you are, because you've gone everywhere. You understand completely how God is touching you and giving you all these experiences and all these different encounters. You know that you've literally kind of fallen off the wagon a couple of times, but that Jesus always welcomes you back. I mean, and even now as you struggle with maybe belief that God is forgiving you, but He has. We just have to say we're sorry, and He forgives us.
Thank you.
You touched so many bases with your story. You're a tremendous story of love, of forgiveness, of how we just have to ask, and He answers. You seek and find. I mean, You touch all the bases, Scott. You touch all the bases. I'm so glad you got a hold of me. How long you been listening?
Probably about 8 months, I guess.
Okay.
In a sense, kind of get it off my chest. It's like I've given you all these stories. Share them with people. They're to be shared. They're not just for you. And everybody gets their faith be encouraged by this. And if you're not a believer, to know that there is a living God and He cares and He loves you and He is intimately involved in every little detail in your life. And all you have to do is ask. And sometimes it's easy to forget, but He's always there. And He will never leave you or forsake you. And I'm living testimony to that.
Thanks, Scott. What is our takeaway? What did God just say in this episode? I think Scott just said it. God is forever faithful, and He does want to be in every little piece of our life. And sometimes we do forget that He is there every day. Sometimes we do forget. Faith it's not a straight line, is it? It's got its ups and downs and hills and valleys, and we're all kind of in that truck, taking those hills and valleys and twists and turns. But a big part of the takeaway that I glean from this episode is from Scott himself, and that is just look at how here's Mr. Truck Driver. He's on a schedule, right? And Scott, God bless you. You just always seem to have time. How he looks for each moment. He's looking. He's waiting. Who's in need? And after all, wasn't it Jesus who, at the end, in separating the sheep from the goats, seems to be pretty important criteria to Him? When I was thirsty, did you give me something to drink? When I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was naked, did you clothe me? When I was in prison, did you visit me? It's very important to Jesus. We entertain angels. We also entertain Jesus. We're supposed to see Jesus in everybody. And Scott, I want to thank you again for demonstrating that we all have time. And I thank you again for sharing your story here at Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. Now, what's your story? Scott waited 8 months. He's been listening for 8 months. How long you been waiting to tell me your story, huh? What's your encounter story with angels, divine intervention? Prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences, big and little God incidents? What's your story? Go to touchedbyheaven.net and share your story at touchedbyheaven.net. And there's also a link there at episode 71 at touchedbyheaven.net to Patreon. If you would care to financially support us on a month-to-month basis, we would be so appreciative of that. Thank you so much. Whether you do or don't, know that you are in our prayers. Thank you. Also, remember, too, TrapperJackSpeaks.com if you're looking for a speaker for your next event, or if you'd like to download the presentation of Did You Hear What God Just Said? This is all about hearing God's voice in our daily lives. These are the stories that brought me back and could either fortify your faith or be shared with somebody else. And it might touch them in the same way that these stories touched me as well. So the presentation, Did You Hear What God Just Said? Is available at TrapperJackSpeaks.com. Okay? Okay. I'll see you next week here at Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack.